Good afternoon, everyone. This is Enrique Sanchez of Spanish United. In this afternoon, we have two very special guests, actually. Would you be kind enough to introduce yourself to the audience, please? You could start first, Ruth. Introduce yourself, please.
Thank you. My name is Ruth Mastron. I'm president of the House of Israel in Balboa Park. Some of you may know the House of Pacific Relations, which is the little complex of international cottages right in the middle of Balboa Park that's been there forever. I used to love to go there on field trips when I was a kid, and now I'm in charge of the House of Israel.
Awesome. And you, Jack.
Hi, my name is Jack Maizel. I used to be also president of the House of Israel, and formerly also board chair of the Jewish Federation in San Diego.
Awesome. Welcome both of you on being on the show.
Thank you, Enrique. Thank you for having us.
Yes, as we had spoken over the phone, Ruth, the purpose of Spanish United is that aside from being a podcast, we are a Hispanic civil rights organization. We primarily are involved in civil rights and also in culture. We try to promote a positive image of the Hispanic people through workshops, through education, through activism and awareness, and also doing as we call in the Jewish community, tzedakah, which is trying to repair the world, and that's been our primary focus. We've been around for about 3 years. So we started out as a small Facebook group, and then we expanded to about 6 chapters in about 6 states. The one here in Los Angeles, the one that I had is the primary chapter here. So I had gone to San Diego a couple of weeks ago where I had met Jose or Joe. He is the head. He is not the head, but he was the former head of the House of Puerto Rico. And I actually had a good opportunity to take a look at all the cottages there. And I think it's a very interesting concept that Balboa Park is doing, because I think that's a very positive way of getting different cultures who may not really mingle with each other to, work together. So I think that's a very interesting concept. So I wanted to go to you, Jack. Ruth had told me that you are part of doing a documentary when it comes to like Hispanic Jews or Mexican Jews in the Jewish community. So can you elaborate more on that? And then you could, bump in, you could hop in at any time you want, Ruth. So let's start with you, Jack, first.
Thank you, Enrique. And before I do, let me just say how much I appreciate what you're talking about, that civics and for the Latin community, and those touch points. And for me, being a Mexican Jew, and seeing the good work of so many of the different houses, but then also the House of Israel, and so that overlap really has given me a first row seat to be able to appreciate how much humanity there is from all the houses, and how all the different houses in their own way want to make a better community, a stronger community, help each other out, and how most of us understand that our futures are linked together. And so thank you for that introduction of what you do, and it is greatly appreciated. And we share in those efforts. Now, to answer about this exciting documentary that we're working on, basically we're trying to capture what has been a very long and rich and beautiful history of the Mexican community, the Mexican Jewish community. And in this project, we're specifically focusing on the history in Mexico City's historical center. And so that is where a lot of the Mexican Jewish community threw their roots as they arrived in Mexico. And there's a lot of history that hasn't been properly documented and captured. And that's what we have a great team working to do. And the House of Israel, recognizing the value of it, has also supported it and seen it as what could be a great cultural legacy for future generations.
Awesome. And Ruth, how did you get connected with Jack in producing this documentary of the Mexican Hispanic Jews in Mexico?
Well, my background is not Mexican, not Hispanic at all. So I admit it's not facet I'm really familiar with, although I did learn a little bit about the crypto Jews of the Southwest, which I believe, and Jack, you correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm certainly not an expert, but they are descendants of Jews that arrived in the New World, whether it was, North America, South America, Latin America, somewhere in between,
Mm,
who were expelled around the time of the Inquisition. And so many of them hid who they were, what they were, for reasons of survival. And even in the New World, the Inquisition managed to reach. And even afterwards, there was just a reflex to hide. So I don't know if maybe that's why I wasn't familiar with the community so much. That doesn't apply to everybody, of course. That's just a certain element. But I had an interesting discussion with a friend of mine from Mexico City who's very Catholic, very practicing, very, very devout. And we were talking about, she says, it's funny, my family does some things that not everybody in Mexico does. And she started to tell me some traditions specifically related to mourning and death that were really familiar to me. And I said, Carmen, I may have some kind of amazing news for you. So now we're not sure about it, but she's looking into if her family has some of these crypto-Jewish roots. And so, as I say, coming to San Diego, I've met more and more Jews from Mexico, from Brazil, from different parts of, I think what can broadly be called the Hispanic Latino world. And it's a new experience for me. It's really, really interesting.
oh,
Yeah, and
absolutely. Yeah,
here
go ahead.
it's very interesting what Ruth mentioned of the crypto Jews, because there are histories, and you find families that once they were allowed to come out of the shadows and find their culture and reintegrate into a formally established Jewish community, they did so. Here, this documentary, the first line is those Jews who arrived at the turn of the 20th century, for the most part, a little bit, some of them before World War One, right after World War One, or right around World War Two, and never had to go through the crypto stage, but rather they're Jews who picked up whatever they had and set off to the New World to try to flee the brutality of the pogroms of Europe, or the anti-Semitism that had been manifesting for so long, and came to establish themselves in the New World. Many of those could not make it into the United States because the United States had quotas and did not accept
Right.
new immigrants, so they ended up in Mexico. And Mexico, arguably, has been one of the most welcoming and fertile grounds for Jewish communities to set their roots. It has been just the stories that I've heard from my grandparents, my great grandparents, and people from their generation. They could not be more thankful, more appreciative, and more giving, and more indebted to Mexico. So much so that, for example, my grandfather enlisted in the Mexican army when it was his turn.
Wow.
And so and that's even though he was the son of immigrants.
Hmm. Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that Spain and Latin America and Jews are actually more intertwined with people, think, because when people think of Judaism or Jewish people outside of the state of Israel, people always put a Caucasian, Ashkenazi, European identity to it. And I think now in the last couple of decades, I think there is a resurgence of many Hispanic crypto Jews that are realizing their ancestry, and many of them are making to teshuva, or return to Judaism. And I do have to say that is something remarkable, because never in the history of the world there's ever been like so many crypto Jews that have appeared out of nowhere. And you actually brought up a good point, because aside from Mexico, uh during and before World War II, the only other two countries in Latin America that also took a lot of Jewish immigrants were Cuba and Dominican Republic. And prior to the Cuban Revolution, Cuba had a population of about 20,000 Jews, and I actually was in Cuba last year, and they still have an active Jewish community. It's much smaller than what it was, 60 years ago. And in the case of Puerto Rico, surprisingly, the three branches of Judaism also exist there as well, which I mentioned earlier, which is Orthodox, Conservative, and Reform, and the same thing with Dominican Republic. But I do have to say that if the Jewish community is going to build better relations with the Hispanic community, I think the best way of doing it is with the crypto Jews that are in Latin America. I think they could be a bridge between healing the divide between Latin America and Israel.
Yeah. And I think too, the film that Jack is working on, even just in little microcosm of our group of international houses, what we're hoping to do is to work with the Latino Hispanic houses, and there's quite a few of them now. We've got several from South America that are relatively new, and Spain, Puerto Rico, quite a few that we could do some kind of project with Jack's film and talk about the Jewish communities in their respective countries as well.
Well, I agree with you.
Absolutely. But the only point I'd make, Enrique, is that there's a very open lane of that a lot can be done with the crypto Jews. And in so much as right now we're distinguishing them between the established organized Jewish community, but which of course many of them would consider them that they are one and the same, just with a little bit of a different history. But the Jewish community, whether it's in Mexico and also Colombia, Argentina, all throughout Latin America, is very strong, very proud, very united, and has worked very hard to establish bridges between themselves and the other communities, the non-Jewish communities in their home countries, as well as between their home countries and the state of Israel. And they have shown great fruits for all of their efforts, because they've been able to show how there are so many aligned interests and aligned objectives, and how everyone is doing everything that they can to get to a better tomorrow. And so they've been able to organize and collaboration across communities and across borders.
Because I think it's very important that Latin Americans and Israel are to have a better working working relationship, especially in the United States, because as you know, with the Hispanophobia and the xenophobia that's been going on in the last couple of years with the previous administration, I really feel that Jews need to be called more to social justice in relations to Hispanic people, because Hispanic people, in my opinion, are one of the most persecuted people in the United States. There are people that may see that differently, but that was part of the reason why I started Spanish United, because I feel that many Hispanic people fall through the cracks. And as you know, Hispanics are not considered a race, we are an ethnicity. Sometimes it's hard to document what happens in terms of hate crimes, in terms of discrimination that many Hispanic people go through on a daily basis, both immigrants and American-born Hispanic people. So I feel that, and just my personal observation that there needs to be more engagement between both groups.
I could not agree with you more, and I should have mentioned this maybe in my introduction, that I also have the good fortune of participating in the Latino Jewish coalition in San Diego that is organized and promoted by the AJC, the American Jewish Committee. And you're spot on, and there's a natural allyship as immigrants, as those who came looking for a better and brighter tomorrow. And there's a lot of crossover, and a lot too many situations arise when either of the communities do better and do well with the allyship of the other community.
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely.
no
Because
doubt.
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead, Ruth. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to stick my 2 cents in, which is that, the definitions that the Census Department and different government organizations, not just in the US, but other countries as well, you know, Jews don't fit into the nice, neat little boxes, and I think in some cases it's the same with, and I hesitate even to use the terminology, the Hispanic Latino communities, because, I know they don't all fit into one monolithic box any more than Jews do. And
Hmm.
I think that's something else that we share is that, if we rely on outside organizations, agencies to tell us who we are, they're probably going to get it wrong.
Hmm. Oh,
Yeah,
I
it's
agree with
funny.
you.
I don't know, Enrique, if you ever came up with this, but I can't tell you how many times people have said to me, "Wait, you're Mexican? I thought you were Jewish,"
Hmm.
or "Or
Yeah,
you're Jewish? You're Jewish? I thought you were Mexican." And so
yeah,
it's always one of those that make you just like stop
yeah,
for a
Right.
moment and catch your breath.
Right,
yeah.
and the same thing with me within the Jewish community. Like a lot of Jews didn't even think that I was Jewish. Like I've had people in different synagogues ask me, interrogate me if I was Jewish, and I would quote to them the whole Talmud, and they still would have doubts.
Yeah, yeah. Definitions, self-definitions, what I think I am, what you think I am. And a lot of it, when you do cover multiple identities, however you define them, a lot of it is situational. For
Hmm.
example, the fact that I'm Jewish when I'm at work, that doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter. What matters is that I can do my job.
Right.
Uh, but when I go to synagogue, it matters a lot.
Hmm.
So, who I am may depend on who I'm with, where I am, what the situation is. And then,
Hmm.
I'm at work and my Jewish identity theoretically doesn't matter and it isn't important. And then I found out that some major meeting has been scheduled for Yom Kippur. All of a sudden the borders get even fuzzier.
Hmm. Yeah, I myself have never experienced anti-Semitism personally, so but I know of people that have. So I could understand where situational situations, come into play.
Yeah. And it's not always, deliberate. Somebody may just not realize that the Jewish calendar is different and that the holidays come on different days. There's not necessarily malice. It may just be
Hmm.
ignorance.
Right, of course. And I do believe that, if the Jewish community in general were to, have better relationships with the outside world, and this is excluding Hispanic people, they should, be more involved in educating people about certain things. Because unfortunately, there is a paranoia within the Jewish community that if someone says or does something, even though it may be done out of ignorance, they jump the gun because I've seen that happen all the time. So I feel that if they take everything with a grain of salt, I think that can prevent anti-Semitism even in situational situations.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think, for any minority, I think it's important. Well, I can't remember, there's a famous phrase, but it's something along the lines of, never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by cluelessness. First of all, check if the person is just innocently clueless, see if you can educate them. 9 times out of 10, in my experience, that solves the problem. Now, there's that 10th time that it gets very sticky, but a lot of times it really is just, I'm sorry, I didn't know, I'll fix that.
Right. One example would
Absolutely.
be that you actually brought up would be All in the Family, which is way before my time, but Archie Bunker's character would be an
Mm.
example of ignorance out of not out of malice, but out of ignorance. Like a lot of things that he would say and do on the program was actually done out of ignorance than out of malice.
Yeah, yeah, he had no clue. And I think that was one of the things about the program. I mean, people did, it wasn't before my time. I remember it. Okay, that's
Mm.
how old I am. But, you know, he was portrayed as clueless, somebody whose horizon not very wide for all kinds of reasons. And at the same time, there were certain episodes where he was deeply human, deeply kind, and, deeply caring, which is, I think, part of the human condition is that somebody can be ignorant and hurt somebody else's feelings, not deliberately, and that's happened to me. And when I say, excuse me, you shouldn't say Jew the price down, because it's like, oh my God, they just didn't pay attention to it. And once they realized, they would never in a million years try to hurt you.
Right, of course. And I feel that that's the only way you could tackle prejudice is through education, because if we just get upset before understanding where the other person comes from, that could create, more tension. So I think education is very important. And that's what we do in Spanish United. We emphasize a lot in education, because a lot of the stereotypes that people have of Hispanic people, unfortunately, has to do with ignorance within our own community. So, I, try to educate our people that if we are to be accepted in mainstream American society, there are things that there's social norms that we have to abide by, because, let's say if we are immigrants from Latin America, we cannot impose our customs, which are acceptable over here. That's where the clash starts. So I think that's very important. So getting back to you, Jack, like what is the outcome of this documentary that you expect the audience or the people to get out of? Like, what's the objective goal?
That's a good question. And I think we would be very, very happy if after watching the movie, people who did not know the story of the Jewish community in Mexico City saw the history of people who really took their future into their hands and worked really hard to provide opportunity to their kids and their grandkids, all while becoming a contributing member of a new community, of a new society. And that story really can applies to many other communities. As we've been saying, of the immigrant, the immigrant is the ultimate entrepreneur.
Absolutely.
It's the person that goes somewhere else betting on their hands and on their hard work, their work ethic, their value for education, their hope for a better tomorrow. And so that's the universality of the story. Of course, here we're just focusing on the Mexican Jewish community in a very in a certain chapter of history. But it's a story that can be applied to many other communities. And then also I would love for I will be very happy if people see how wonderful and welcoming Mexico was to my great grandparents and my grandparents and my whole community, because it is truly, truly remarkable. One could argue that it is one of the very, very few, or one of the very best examples in history of a country being welcoming to the Jewish community.
Awesome. Well, I wanted to say that we have unfortunately come to the end of our time, but I wanted to say to Ruth and to Jack, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been an honor to have you, and to your listeners in the House of Israel down in San Diego. Spanish United, we are on all platforms, social media platforms. We are on Spanish United Facebook, Twitter, now known as X, Instagram, YouTube. And anyone wants to make a charitable donation, you could contact me via direct message. And as soon as I'm finished here, I will definitely send both of you and email you the podcast link. You could share it to everyone that you want to share it with.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Enrique.
You too. Have yourself a wonderful evening, and Hag Sameach.
Thank you. You as well. Thank you.
Bye-bye.